All right, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to first introduce everybody. So my name is Seema Alexander, and I'm coming to you live on day 4 from the WeWork, our co-working sponsor and partner in downtown Washington, D.C. I'm a founder and chief strategy officer for Disruptive.CEO. It's a strategic advisory firm focused on supporting visionary founders and companies to scale and grow. This year, I've had the privilege to curate the growth track for the DC startup community and support the social impact track, which is why you're here today. So if you are not familiar with DC Startup Week, it's a 5-day event every September, focused solely for budding entrepreneurs and growth stage entrepreneurs in the DMV area. This year, because of COVID, we've had obviously to go virtual, but it's been so exciting because we've still had over 100 panels for the week, 250 speakers, and up to 4,000 attendees thus far attending, and we still have a day to go. So I'm so excited to introduce this session. We're going to be spotlighting some incredible women entrepreneurs who are focused on leading social good businesses and organizations. Our esteemed moderator for this session is Kate Glantz. She's a senior director for our economic opportunity at U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, who works in partnership with the private sector to advance women's economic empowerment, foster inclusive entrepreneurship, and champion equity, diversity, and inclusion in the workplace. Our current panelists, we are waiting on one, is Seema Patel. Seema Patel is the CEO of the Global Knowledge Initiative. We also have Michelle Riestra. She's the Executive Director of CODESPA America. A quick logistics tip right before I introduce Kate to take over. If you do have questions throughout the panel, please use the chat function below and just put all your questions in caps so Kate will know when to answer your questions throughout the session. So with that, please join me in welcoming Kate Glantz to the DC Startup Week stage. Kate?
Hi, everyone. Good evening. I hope you all had a wonderful day, and I am so thankful that you're capping it off with us this evening. I will say beverages of any kind are encouraged, and I will be cracking one open after this. So again, my name is Kate Glantz. I lead the Economic Opportunity Portfolio at the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, but I actually cut my teeth as a social entrepreneur in the DC tech scene about 6 years ago, and have been to this event in every capacity as a starving entrepreneur, eager to network, as a founder, talking about making my way in the world, and now as someone part of the ecosystem that works with entrepreneurs every day on their journeys. So I couldn't be more excited to be back and moderating the conversation this evening. As Seema said, the name of the panel is Women Entrepreneurship for Social Good. I have to say, I didn't have a role in creating the name of this panel. So as I began to think about how to frame the conversation, I had some questions. So I thought first, should we focus on women who are social entrepreneurs? Should we focus on why investing in women entrepreneurs is important for social good? Should we talk about the role these specific women are playing in the social impact space? And as your moderator, I decided to make the executive decision to just cover all of it. So on this panel, you're gonna meet leaders from such an amazing diversity of backgrounds and experiences. And I couldn't be more excited to dig into their perspectives on all things women, entrepreneurship, and social good. Just to reinforce those housekeeping notes, the session will run until 6 p.m. We'll start with some intros, dive into questions, and then we'll turn it over to you for Q&A. And at any time, if you have questions, please don't be shy, share them. And also, let's hear what you think. Like if you have a perspective you'd like to share, type it in the box. And as I can, I'll also read what you think. So I will say with that, and do we have Rahama on? I know she is almost here.
I haven't seen her yet.
Okay, she texted me and said she will be on any minute. So
as soon as she gets here, so you can get started with these.
Okay, so I will say, ladies, we all know that working in social impact is hard. Being an entrepreneur is really hard. And Lynn, let's layer that in with 2020. And honestly, the only question that I think is appropriate to start with is, How are you doing? So I am going to ask each of you to introduce yourselves and your organization and just give us a temperature check on how things are going. So let's start with Seema.
Hi, everyone. I'm really excited to be part of the DC startup community. And this week, I'm a native of this city. And so it's always really exciting to see people coming together in the city that I love around entrepreneurship and around social impact, which are really two hard issues to work on. Really quick about me, I am the CEO of Global Knowledge Initiative, and we are an innovation design consultancy supporting social impact organizations and leaders to find better ways of working to design better solutions to complex systemic challenges. We are working with all the way from large donor organizations like USAID and DFID that are funding multi-million-dollar projects to create social impact, all the way to the individual entrepreneur around the world in the US, and trying to find better solutions and market services that can help solve some of the challenges we're facing. My history has been in social impact and development work for 20 years. And so I've kind of played multiple roles in my life, from being a funder to being a program designer. I've designed and run a number of programs that are actually supporting social entrepreneurs around the world, providing funding and acceleration, support and mentorship to help them scale. But now I am a CEO and in the hot seat myself. And so I am learning a ton of lessons, from a lived experience, and creating much more empathy for all the different social enterprises and entrepreneurs I've funded and, brought different technical assistance to. Now I know what it feels like to be you guys, and it is a humbling experience. So what am I feeling right now? I'm feeling two things. One, I'm feeling how critical it is to find sort of personal resilience in a time like this. And I'm feeling the need for us to talk about what that means for us as individual leaders, how we personally show up, how we create self-care so that we can show up for our stakeholders and our teams and our staff in a way that's positive. And so trying to spend a lot of time there and focused on self-care. And then the second thing I'm feeling is really the opportunity that can come from pain. And I think we're in a really painful moment in the world right now with the equity challenges we see and COVID and everything that's going on, that's showing us how fragile our systems are and how they've been really designed and built to reinforce patterns that we don't want to see show up in the world. And but in all that pain is opportunity, and opportunity for new ideas, innovations, hopefulness, and new kind of collaborations that I think are really sparking a new approach to systems change and social impact. So that's me.
Amazing. Thank you, Seema. Welcome, Rahama. Let's turn it over to you. Just give us a temperature check, introduce yourself. What are you working on? You're on mute.
So I'm feeling frazzled. Let's just start there. Thank you so much for having me. I had another speaking event that lasted a little bit too long, so I apologize for the tardiness. It's DC Startup Week, so I guess that everyone wants to hear about Yeleen. So my name is Rahama Wright. I'm the founder of Yeleen, which is a social impact company I started after serving in the Peace Corps. And what we do is we create body care products that are natural, toxic-free, ethically sourcing from women-owned cooperatives in northern Ghana. And by doing that, we're helping women increase their income by 5 times their country's minimum wage, giving them the ability to do things like send their kids to school, buy food, buy medicine, invest in other income-generating activities. And I am Ghanaian American, and so I grew up in upstate New York. That's where my dad's family is from, but my mom's family is from Ghana. So as a child, I always was very interested in African issues, always was very curious about Africa, and knew that I would work on the continent. I just didn't know how and what capacity, and really thought I would be a foreign service officer. Working at the State Department, and my career trajectory was that. I studied international affairs and political science. I interned at the State Department and also interned at the American Embassy in Burkina Faso. But it was when I did Peace Corps, and actually for the very first time in my life lived in a small rural village in Mali, that all changed for me. and I became really concerned about not only how women in African villages make money, but shea butter and how it's brought to market, and the way that there are issues around sustainability, there are issues around economic development for the women who produce this amazing product. And so I started to become really obsessed about shea butter and figuring out a way to help women who typically for generations have been unable to financially benefit from shea. So there are about 16 million women across Africa who are part of the global shea butter supply chain. It only grows in Africa. It grows on a tree, and you can see right back there, there's the tree. And women are the harvesters. So you can't actually get a shea product anywhere without a woman in Africa being a part of the supply chain. Meaning whatever brand, whoever's selling it, it first starts with a woman in Africa. And so for me, when I started Yeleen, it was really not only to bring great products to market, but also to give women visibility and a voice by giving them the capacity through creating cooperatives, access to capital, access to production equipment, and then connecting what they do to the marketplace. So COVID-19 and how do I feel? Well, I work globally and I have not been able to travel. I have not been able to fly. It's very unusual that we are in the 9th month of the year and I haven't been on a plane. Like that's never, I think the last time that happened, I was an undergrad. So it's been really difficult in terms of our supply chain. Ghana closed its borders since April. They reopened last week. And so all of our processing centers in the north had to shut down because there are a lot of restrictions around movement and people being able to work in groups. So we're still trying to figure that out. So there's been a little bit, a lot of stress over the last few months. But to what Seema was saying, I do think there is a tremendous amount of opportunity during difficult times. I'm definitely looking for as many opportunities as possible. But also on top of that, I'm feeling more so than I've ever felt in my entire life, the need to connect with other people and like really have meaningful connections, and just develop relationships that's not related to business, right? Connecting to people, checking on them. We're really in this together. And I think this moment is an opportunity for us to take the time to help our neighbor, check on our friends, call someone you haven't talked to in a while, because we're kind of stuck, right? And so why not be stuck in a way where we're actually connecting the best that we can.
That's amazing. You're the best. And something you said really resonated, that as a fellow Peace Corps volunteer, I love that. But you're also a State Department dropout. And I was languishing on the Foreign Service Register, thinking that was how I would engage with the world, and then left it for entrepreneurship. So I bet there is a whole support group opportunity out there for people who left the government in pursuit of entrepreneurship, especially in DC. So that's amazing.
We can start that support group.
Yes. All right. So on to Michelle. Let's hear from Michelle Riestra.
Thanks, Katie. Well, I'm Michelle, and I run an international nonprofit called CODESPA America. And our mission is to really support vulnerable entrepreneurs. So for people that are living in extreme poverty, we come up with market-based solutions to whatever problem their experience is. So we have teams in 11 countries, and how we operate is first our team do a market study of the area and then identify the needs of the community. Do they need water? Do they need food? And then we come up with a market-based solution for their problem. They need business training. We need to develop the supply and demand value chain. And then we take action and we implement those solutions. For me, I'm actually a lawyer by training. So I was doing international law and advising member countries, and I would travel all over. And one time I looked out the window and I saw this kid, and he had no running water and he was drinking dirty water. And I thought, how is it, 2010, and we don't have a sustainable, there's still food insecurity, and we're not doing anything to really support people in a sustainable way, right? So with CODESPA, I kind of left that, and I get to support entrepreneurs from, developing a business idea to get them access to markets, to have them like generate income, for them to actually be able to support themselves and their families.
Fantastic. And how are you feeling?
Well, COVID has been, like Rahama, I'm not traveling. So it's been very hard. My teams are all over. I'm actually the only one based in DC. But it's been two things. One is noticing the tech gap, because these vulnerable communities and these vulnerable entrepreneurs, they don't have access to internet, or they don't have access to the devices that we will need to do the training. But then also the exciting opportunity to just pivot and think creatively and think of ways for us to keep supporting these entrepreneurs, and also to support them in transitioning their business model so they could also take care of the new needs because of COVID and social distancing.
Well, welcome to our amazing panelists, and to all of you. I see in the comments we have both a government dropout and someone on the Foreign Service Register, so lots of kindred spirits here. All right, so I'm going to jump into a couple questions, and I want to start really, really high level with systems change, and then get all the way down to a single human. So let's start with Seema. What is the Global Knowledge Initiative's approach to creating systems change? And how do you work with entrepreneurs to tackle some of society's biggest challenges? No pressure.
So let me start with, my experience in history and social impact is, now 20, 25 years, and the language changes, right? But the mission does not. I think at the end of the day, we see these challenges in our communities and societies, and we want to find sustainable, lasting solutions. But yet the language is changing, and I think in a positive and a healthy way. Originally, we would say we're a social impact organization. We care about creating impact. And we could create lots of great outcomes, teachers trained, students going to school, jobs, achieved and created. What we're realizing, though, is that in everything that we're operating in society, we're really operating within a complex system, and that system is dynamic. And it's made up of so many different incentives and power and different perspectives that even if we create social impact, that impact can go away. So think about all the investments we create to create resilience, agriculture and food systems, and COVID hit. And so that impact can disappear in a second if we're not really looking at the dynamics in the system and what are some of the underlying root causes, and really addressing at that deep structural in society. And so we are now 100% focused on this perspective, right? That the complex problems we want to solve, whether it's through entrepreneurship, whether it's through government advocacy and policy change, whether it's through, new types of ways that the private sector or different institutions can operate. If we see it as a complex and dynamic shifting system, then we can come up with better solutions on how to design strategies, investments, products, services, and how to really work, not just what we deliver, but how we're delivering it as a key aspect of the change we want to create. And so as GKI, a lot of what we're doing is working with funders to really understand the systemic perspective and realize no problem is going to be solved without massive amount of collaboration across different stakeholder groups. And that if we don't really understand these root causes and dynamics, we're just always kind of band-aiding symptoms. And the problems are too big to address it that way. The scale is too big to address it that way. So we work with them, we're advising with them, we're helping them find new types of unusual partnerships with actors across different sectors, civil society, private sector, and social entrepreneurs, which is, like, in my view, a key lever for change. Because what I think of them as is the system disruptors. They're the ones that are coming up with new business models, new types of products, new ways of working that some of the more traditional institutions cannot see. They don't have the innovation for it. They don't have the ability to both translate real ground and field knowledge with solutions that are very actively addressing some of these deep root causes and mental models. And so if we think of social entrepreneurs as the disruptors, then our role, I mean, in GKI, and I think what other funders and other investors, other support systems that social entrepreneurs have, be the accelerator programs or fellowship programs to build capacity and skills, should all be thinking about how do we help our social entrepreneurs really take a systemic approach to the way they're driving their business model and their strategies. And there's just like a couple key lessons that I think pertain to all social entrepreneurs around that, which is, you know, pursuing pragmatic collaboration. Who are you collaborating with in your business model scale up strategies? How can you create partnerships with governments or larger private sector to scale up, or with community members in new ways? So really finding new types of collaboration, and we help them do that. Identify who in the system they should be really engaging with for that kind of deeper and systemic change. Making long plays. As entrepreneurs, we're always trying to get, you know, we have that entrepreneurial mindset. We're thinking what's next. But, you know, if you're solving poverty, or you're trying to empower women in communities that have got a long history of culture, there is a long play in this. And I think the long play is a little bit about helping social entrepreneurs recognize that what they're delivering is more than the product and service. It's the change in mindsets in the communities and among stakeholder groups. Bringing history, culture, you know, and honoring that in the way that entrepreneurs are thinking about their products and solutions and their business models. You know, where is the opportunity for creating more equity? Where is the opportunity for more inclusion? And then really thinking about how to integrate a real adaptive and learning mindset. These problems are not going to be solved easily, and there's constant new information coming at us. And I think one of the greatest capacities is you know, the flexibility to adapt and sort of always be innovating and learning. And so we have a lot of courses, we have trainings, we have direct advisory and support that we're providing different social entrepreneurs to help them bring these kind of mindsets and skill sets into their business models and their thinking about their scale up.
That was an amazing answer. I was literally taking notes. So thank you for that. All right, so let's bring it now down to the community level. And this one's for Michelle. What has been a compelling or surprising outcome of CODESPA's presence in some of the communities where you work? And what are you seeing happening with families and communities more broadly when a woman is empowered with entrepreneurship training?
In a lot of our projects, especially with entrepreneurship training, we focus on women. And why? Because when you economically empower a woman who's a mother, who's the daughter, there's a multiplier effect. I mean, studies have shown that it spurs economic growth and they become these agents of change. So for me, one of the stories that I love the most is visiting the land of the Yachacs in Peru. And it's this indigenous community of, I think there's about 100 families that are part of the community, and we help them organize and start their own business in terms of tourism routes, textiles. And when we first got there, the role of the female was mostly to take care, because of societal norms, to take care of the children and the cattle. And women sometimes will do these activities and they're not getting compensated for this. So as they're starting to build their business and generate income, they also start providing to the family income. And for us, coming And visiting them after a few years, you know, their income increases 20% at the end of the year. Their husbands, you can see their husbands are completely changing their mindset. Now they're like proud. The women themselves are trusting themselves. I mean, their self-esteem, they never thought they could be contributing to society like they are. Some of the training, they're hiring people and they're teaching. One of them, Modesta is her name, she was telling me, a lot of the widows that don't have husbands to support themselves, I'm teaching them these textile skills and they can contribute and now they have an income. So for us, it's exciting to come years later and see how now 70% of the businesses are run by the women, and also to meet the daughters that back then they were little, but now they're themselves are going to school and also have the drive to want to start their own business. So that has been, for me, that has been like the most gratifying, because going back to what Seema was saying, it's systemic change, right? And we're very cautiously, by investing in women, we're really transforming the social fabric of these communities, and really focusing on the family unit as a whole, not just, you know, societal norms that may not really empower women.
So that's now a really good segue for Rahama to walk us through the supply chain. And I'd love for you to highlight the impact Yeleen has on women, or maybe specifically a woman that you know, that you purchase from or work with. Show us what it looks like at that, you know, that level.
I would echo a lot of what Michelle is saying around empowering women. You empower women and the entire community changes. When I started Yeleen, I was very conscious of the fact that even though I'm, you know, African, Ghanaian, Black, there is a certain amount of privilege I was bringing into the communities that I work in, and I had to be careful about that. I never wanted the women in the communities that I've worked in to put me on a pedestal or put me in this like savior category. You did the Peace Corps, you've worked in international affairs, you know what I'm talking about. And I say all of that to Seema's point, that we have to be conscious of these types of things, because the people in these communities are autonomous, they are smart, they are motivated, they are, they're just like us, right? But however, because they deal with extreme levels of poverty, for some reason, we put them in a category of not being able to take care of themselves, which is not the case. They can take care of themselves. The issue and challenge is, what access to resources do they have? The issue and challenge is, what are the policies in their countries or their communities that prevent them from being able to stand on their own? And so I think for anyone working in international affairs or development in developing countries, you have to be aware of that in order to make true, sustained, lasting impact that does not perpetuate this cycle of foreigners have to come into our communities in order for us to do good, in order for us to do well. That's really important for me to share that. And so that philosophy trickles through the entire Yeleen business model. We are not going into communities and telling women what to do, or, you know, setting the standards or anything like that. We are partners. And I tell the women in our cooperatives all the time, I'm not a Shea producer. You're the Shea producer. So I'm here to provide the value that you're looking for and that you need. I am not here to determine anything about your community, about your families. I'm very sensitive to cultural practices, knowing that as an American, I have a worldview that might be different from the people in my communities, but it's not my job to tell them how to live their lives. What my job is to facilitate and create the connections and provide access to the tools and the resources so that they then can benefit from something that they've been doing in their communities for hundreds of years. However, because of colonization, because of the way global markets are developed and global supply chains are developed, they've been left out. They've been left out of formal markets. And most of the women that we work with are in the informal markets. And we're just bringing them into the formal market by creating these market linkages and creating those market connections. And so that's the first layer of impact, helping communities of women who for hundreds of years have been doing an activity that they're just not being paid for. We're not creating anything new. We're not instituting something that is, you know, created in an American context and then planted into the local communities. We're not doing that. And so that's the first thing. You're already creating this amazing product. It's part of your traditional practice. How can we help you generate money from your labor versus other people taking advantage of your labor and keeping you in a place of where you're dealing with extreme levels of poverty? So what does that entail? Organizing cooperatives. So that's the capacity building, the community building, providing access to production equipment, providing access to capital. And then following that entire journey from when the women pick the fruit all the way to making the shea butter and then creating the product that people can now buy. So that is our first kind of focus, is the capacity building and developing the ecosystem and infrastructure, because we actually do build the facilities that a lot of the cooperative members work at. So developing the infrastructure so that they can then utilize what they've been doing for hundreds of years and benefit from that. The way that we track our impact is very simple. Are women's income increasing? That's it. We don't do buy one, give one models. We don't do buy a product. We donate to a school or donate to a health center. We measure impact by, are women increasing their income? Are women getting money in their pockets? And when I do, or prior to COVID-19, when I would do demos in Whole Foods and I would have these conversations with people, they'd be like, oh, well, what percent of profits go back into the community? And what I say is that before we even make a profit, a woman is benefiting. And that's the difference with our business model. Before we sell a product, a woman has already generated a living wage because we built that into our costs of how we make our products. And I think that's really important because we've kind of, in a sense, been brainwashed over, let's wait for a company to make profit before someone benefits. What if that company doesn't make any profit? You know, then the community doesn't benefit. And so that is really important part of our model. So how do we determine a living wage? We interview the women in our communities. First, we look at the government in terms of what their standard is for the minimum wage. We then interview women on everything from how much does local daily transportation cost? How much does it cost to buy, you know, daily goods? How much does it cost for your kid to pay for a school fee or get a book back? Or, you know, what is your cost of living? And from that, we developed a multiplier 5 against the Ghanaian minimum wage. And so that's how we calculate the level of impact in terms of finances for the women in the communities that we partner with. And then the other part of Shea Yeleen is the visibility piece. We bring voice and visibility for the women in our supply chain. How do we do that? We were the first company that Whole Foods has ever partnered with that actually had shea butter producers in Whole Foods stores, talking to buyers, talking to customers, being able to see how much we sell the shea products for, understanding from when we get the shea butter from them, understanding everything that goes into our manufacturing process, and being able to even see what competitors are doing and giving them that awareness and giving them that transparency. That's really important. And to Michelle's point, when the women that we had, we did 2 different trips. One was in partnership with the Smithsonian. The other was in partnership with the Smithsonian in partnership with Peace Corps. And then the other was in partnership with Whole Foods. Their husbands would call them every day. And the amount of pride that they had for their wives, who, for the most part, in their day-to-day lives, they probably didn't even acknowledge, you know, them taking care of the kids and cooking and cleaning and all that stuff, because that's just women's work. But now they're like bragging to people in the villages, My wife is in Boston. Do you know where Boston is? My wife.
You're still on mute. There you go. You're still on mute. There you go.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Something affected my Zoom. And all of that actually translated into reduced issues in terms of stress in the family life. Because now it's not just the husband who's making money, the wife is also making money. So that means that a lot of times arguments, even in America, a lot of times in relationships, people argue over money. I think it's the #1 reason why people divorce, right? Money issues. Same thing. Like I said, we're very similar. But now the husbands are seeing the contributions of their wives, which is reducing tension in the household. And so those are all the things that you don't necessarily measure, you know, when you're talking about impact, but it's so important to measure when you're talking about changing dynamics, culture, and changing things where people are living at just a better standard of living, right? And so I hope that answered your question. I know it was very detailed, but it's so important for me to share it because I think a lot of times people get confused about what social impact really means. And I want people to understand what Yeleen social impact is all about, and also understanding the philosophy behind giving people the tools so that they can make the decisions for themselves, which I think is incredibly important. The same way we would want companies to pay us a fair living wage here in America is the same philosophy we have for the women in our supply chain.
That was just so great. And I really think that needs to be like a Medium post that everyone in social impact should read. So if you could transcribe, someone will transcribe that. But thank you. So I want to talk quickly about partnerships. I think this one can maybe Seema, you take this one, and then we'll get into just 2 more questions, and then we have some great ones from the attendees, and keep asking them. I'm trying to keep up in the comments. So obviously, you know, this work doesn't happen in a silo. And so Seema, can you talk just a little bit from your point of view or your vantage point, what is the power of partnerships? You know, as a social entrepreneur at maybe the early stage, what type of partnerships might be valuable, and just give us a broader, you know, understanding of how different players in the space work together.
No, thank you for that question. I mean, I think you know, both Michelle and Rahama are working deep in the supply chain and working with, you know, in the community level where I am not. I think would be interesting to hear how they sort of bring that partnership to that local level, because I think that's where it's most critical. But I will say, you know, in the relationships I've had with social entrepreneurs, you know, around the world, a lot of them are very different the way they think about this perspective of partnerships in their early stage versus in their growth stage. And I think that's natural and it makes sense. I mean, in the early stage, I think it really is about understanding the problem, and to the point of, you know, if we're not solving a problem within our own community where we are the stakeholder for our own business, you know, we're our own users, how critical it is to really spend the time in partnership with communities and really finding opportunities to co-design and really understand the dynamics. And you hear that in both of the stories here. Those partnerships are going to be most critical. I mean, the more we understand the problem, the better we'll be able to pivot and come up with innovative solutions. And so that's where I would spend those early stage time. You know, but as scale and as you're thinking about, you know, I have to put together a full supply chain. Like I've got the producers and I've got my community, and now I need my partners and my distributors, if that's a product-based approach, or if you're really looking at, you know, a role where you're playing a service, like thinking about how else can I scale up the service? We can't often provide everything people need in their lives. I mean, I go to different places for education than I do for health. And so like, yet so many social entrepreneurs are finding themselves being a service provider for all things because the system is so broken, other providers are not available, you know, and you realize that holistic solutions are needed. So partnerships that help expand reach and bring different sort of add-on services into your pool, because you can then stay where you're most, best placed. I think those are really important if you're trying to find holistic solutions for communities and social challenges. And then of course the partnerships around thinking about how do you scale up. And, I know that many, as you think about funding and you think about, scale up partners, and do I partner with the government or do I partner with larger NGOs or with other private sector actors? I think the key thing for me that I've seen over and over again, when you're a social impact entrepreneur, how important it is to partner with people that are aligned to your mission, aligned to your values, aligned to what your purpose is, because the money might be there today, but you'll find that the partnership breaks over time. And so I think especially as you get into translating across different types of institutions and organizations. And so I think, knowing and sort of holding some worth that you've built a social enterprise, it's constant community feedback and need, and that it's like now, as an ambassador to those stakeholders, on you to find the partnerships that are going to keep the culture of what you're doing alive and not sort of stress it. And so that's just some thoughts I could offer that, but I think,
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, because of time, I think let's keep moving. So let's pivot a little and talk about being a CEO. Does being a woman, and anyone can take this, maybe Michelle, because we haven't heard from you in a few minutes, but does being a woman impact how you show up as a leader? And does your leadership style change when you're engaging in other cultures or with people in other countries?
Yes, completely. I think especially, Rahama talked about this and Seema did as well, just on having the ability to adapt and listen. Like, we're not there to dictate what they need to do. We're there to basically understand what their needs are, like understand how can we really help them help themselves, right? We're not the heroes, we're not their saviors, they're their own saviors. And I think as a woman CEO, especially also when you're young, there could be a lot of pushback, but it's that attitude of listening, understanding, and for them to know that you're on their side. You're not trying to change anything, you're in their team. And really, you're just, they have intellect, they have will, they have so much capacity because they're human beings like you and me. We just were exposed to more opportunities. So when they realize that it's about them, not us, I think people are more receptive. I think at the beginning when I travel, of course you have to adapt and respect the culture norms, but I think once they see that you're there for them, then people are a lot more receptive.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to ask each of you for a really quick response to this last question, and then we'll do a couple audience questions. So can you each share one piece of advice for social entrepreneurs in the early or idea stage of their venture?
Okay, I'll start. In the early stages of Yeleen, I had zero money. I had like $6,000 to my name from my Peace Corps readjustment allowance. I had just moved to a new city, so I did not know anybody. And I didn't even know anything about starting a business or a social enterprise. I had never heard of a balance sheet or profit and loss statement. I didn't know what investors are. It was, so I share all of that to say, if I can start a business, literally anybody, when I say anybody can. And the top kind of three things I would say in the early days, don't be afraid to tell everyone that you meet, that you talk to about your idea, even if it's in the very early stages. And the reason why I say this is that I didn't realize by talking to people at the grocery store, on the bus, on a train, on a plane, wherever, my church, I was actually refining my pitch, and people would ask me questions that I'd never even considered, and it helped me develop, kind of further refine and develop exactly what I wanted to do which prepared me when eventually I was standing in front of investors and pitching them to invest in Yeleen. And so just don't be afraid. It doesn't have to be perfect. It doesn't have to be fully formed. In the early days, just get your idea out there. The other thing is that I've raised a significant amount of capital for Yeleen, and people always ask me, how did you get your investors? How did you do this? How did you do that? People. People are the answer. And when I say people, yes, when it comes to early stage startups, getting access to money is a challenge for sure. But how are you going to get that money? You're going to get it through people. So cultivating and building the right relationships is so important. I was able to get access to my investors through someone I went to church with. But that person knew me for 7, almost 8 years before they were able to make that introduction, right? And I share that again. You don't have to have everything figured out, but if you're putting yourself in the right place where you can cultivate the right relationships, that's what's going to get you to raising your round, you know, pitching to a retailer, whatever it may be. And the third thing, which I did not do at all, and I will say this too, I did not have a business, like a real business plan probably until like almost 5 years in. Don't be me. Don't be me. Start developing a business plan much earlier. But I say this because I think it's so important. Really figure out for yourself what your triggers are. How do you handle stress? How do you handle disappointment? Those things people don't talk about enough. And I think a couple of years ago, I saw an article about how entrepreneurs in Silicon Valley had a high level of depression and anxiety. And I think that it's so important in the early days to really understand that component of your personality and yourself, because when you're an entrepreneur, this is a long game. It's not a short thing. I've been doing this since 2005. And so you're going to run up against some really incredible highs and really, really, really low lows, like really devastating lows, from relationships to navigating family responsibilities to investors to managing a team. All of that is going to be very difficult emotionally. And you have to figure out earlier on in your journey who you are as a person when things are not working out. Because those are the days that will get you to the next day and get you to, you know, whatever vision that you have. So really figuring that early on is so important.
Thank you. All right, let's do quick words of advice, and then I want to get to one audience question.
You follow that. I mean, I think those were amazing guidance and advice. So I'll just add to it rather than try to speak to the more about those. One, I think, is just the value and importance of building a team and culture. And like, I really think that with the right team, with the right culture, you can achieve anything. And that culture of creating the psychological safety to innovate, to say we don't know the answer, especially when you're talking social impact, because most of the time we don't have the answer. Otherwise these problems would be solved, you know? And so creating a team that honors that, I think, is really critical to success. And I think that means showing up as a leader that's kind of really prepared to say, what are we as individuals good at? And what are we not, right? Where is there someone else who's gonna do that better than me trying to struggle to figure that out? And so I think really thinking about your critical skills and where do you need support, because it's not your bag or it's not something that you do naturally, and building around that so that you're really thinking about how does the team stay strong, not how do I as the entrepreneur and the lead stay strong and resilient. So I'd add that to it. I want to take a moment to talk about women and women entrepreneurs in particular, because it's something that we don't honor often in ourselves, but it is over and over and over coming out in research. Women are rated, HBR just did a big study, revised study on women leadership. Women are rated higher on almost every score of leadership that's out there. So taking initiative, resilience, practicing self-development, driving for results, bold leadership, women are scoring higher than men. And yet we show up a little bit without the same confidence. And so really trying to figure out how as women, we lean into our skills. And a lot of those skills are about the feminine, the emotional skills that we bring, the ability to solve problems from a relational perspective. And that's going to matter in your partnerships and in your communities you're working. And so I don't know, I think it's really time for us to take this by the reins as women leaders and women entrepreneurs, that we are we are particularly well placed, not only to run businesses, but to run businesses that solve some of our most challenging problems, and, find power in that, and find grace in that, and show up the way we are without sort of apologizing for our leadership style and our leadership power, because it's natural. And so I think, little note on women and how we might advise ourselves to kind of go out there bold.
I'm charged. Let's do it. That was amazing. All right, Michelle.
I would just say, hearing, like I said, I'm the only one based out of DC. So for me, community is very important. Like Rahama said, it's a roller coaster. You have high points, you have low points. And I found, you get discouraged, but with other entrepreneurs, other founders, you realize like we're all in this together. And if you can create those synergies or partnerships, and sometimes even make yourself vulnerable in sharing your struggles, you'll learn from other founders and also find how we can help each other accomplish what we're trying to do. And it's the ripple effect of social good and social impact. And I think there's so much wisdom in just pausing and resting and reflecting. And I think it's something to keep in mind as you're starting your business, to just really build that community.
Amazing. And unfortunately, I think we're going to be out of time for any audience questions. I want to honor that it's dinner time and happy hour time and just time for the next thing. So Michelle, there was a really good question for you in the group chat from Allison Anderson. So just check that out and maybe you can connect with her or tweet at each other or something. But I will just quickly say thank you all so much for your time, to our panelists for your perspective and really, really profound just POV, or I guess that's the same thing as perspective, isn't it? Just really profound thoughts, and thank you for sharing it with us. And to all of our attendees, it's so great to see you engaging in the chat. I hope you had a lovely time, and stay in touch. I think we're all on Twitter, so find us there. And I'm going to turn it over to Seema Seema Alexander to officially close this out.
Yeah, there are two Seemas on this channel. So
which was very confusing in the email thread originally.
I am sorry.
No.
Kate, thank you so much for moderating such a passionate and dynamic conversation. I mean, Seema, Michelle, Rahama, I know she might have gotten kicked off, but I mean, like literally I'm in awe of the impact that you guys are making in this world. And Seema, your comments on women and entrepreneurship, I'm a big proponent, and I'm even more charged. I was leaning in as you were talking about that because that's so important to me, and I cannot agree with you more. So for anyone listening to this session who's looking to build or scale their social impact organization, I mean, you just had an opportunity to listen to 3 different perspectives from 3 different powerhouses developing systematic change processes in businesses. And the one thing I took away is multiple things I took away, but when you focus on building up women entrepreneurs and helping them develop sustainable businesses, and especially for those of you who work in international development, specifically with indigenous women, when they're with the numbers, the amount of money they're making above minimum wage, you're changing the fabric of the community when you uplift that woman. And that's so powerful. And again, I commend you for that. And I think that also demands a celebration. So if you guys don't know, we're in virtual happy hour right now. That's our next stop. It actually started at 5:30. So please join us there. And tomorrow is day 5, the last day, I cannot believe it, of DC Startup Week. We have a phenomenal conversations in the morning. One I'll highlight is the CEO's framework for employee engagement, culture, and retention. Super important in the times of COVID. And then we have our pitch competition finale and reward ceremony in the afternoon. So with that, see you at happy hour and see you tomorrow. Thank you all.